Hi, Donald.
Hey, Leroy, so sorry about that, man.
No, it's all right. It's good. How are you doing? You're right.
Doing all right, overcoming a little sickness, but I'm much
Ah,
better this
right,
week. Last week was bad, but
right. So you're on the upswing now, then.
oh yeah, upswing,
Good,
getting
good.
ready to like take care of all the problems I have this week. When you take off time last week, then now everything comes back full force,
Yeah. Well, you've got to do double time now, haven't you?
right? But it's all good though. How about you,
Yeah.
man?
Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, good. Look, thanks for coming on and doing this.
Of
I know
course.
your schedule's hectic. So yeah, I do appreciate it. When I sent that message out, I weren't expecting as many people to come back and agree to it. So genuinely overwhelmed by it, really, which is good. So I've started recording already. So for the people that are going to be watching this, just introduce yourself and tell them what it is you do.
Yeah, so my name is Donald C. Kelly. I run an organization, a sales training company called the Sales Evangelist out of South Florida. And we essentially help B2B team a lot of companies in the mid-market space and also some in the SMB space when it comes to building pipeline,
Yeah.
top of funnel activity, LinkedIn, cold outreach, and so forth. And we find it fun, and we have a popular sales podcast as well called the Sales Evangelist.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? 1,700 episodes on that so far, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. How you find it transition from, because obviously you put a post out the other week. I can't remember how long ago it was, where you said, don't give up on your dreams, and this was your picture
Yeah.
of your first podcast. So you've obviously seen it grow and grow
Yeah.
immensely. Like how has that gone for you?
It's been amazing. Like I'm telling you, like the fact that we're connecting right now is a direct response or direct correlation because of the podcast. It's opened doors that I probably would never have been able to walk through because of the simple fact of just creating content. I was a full
Yeah,
time software sales rep. I had a good job, making decent money, making good commission. And
mm,
I figured let's just share what was working. And lo and behold, there are other people that found beneficial from that. And couple of years after in doing a podcast, I was getting a lot of coaching and using a lot of vacation days, and it just made sense to jump ship. I wasn't making the same money I was when I first
yeah,
started, but what happened over time was that reputation increased, and got a chance to, I mean, rub elbows with people like Conan O'Brien. I've got a chance to,
yeah,
share the stage keynotes at like conferences like Dreamforce and HubSpot, and all of that came from just a little podcast. So
yeah.
you never give up on that, man.
And how long were you doing the podcast before you set up the Sales Evangelist? Then?
Sales evangelist. I know it's a tongue
Yeah.
twister right now. Um, I was doing a podcast. I started in 2012 with the idea.
Right.
Then in 2013,
Because that's pretty early on. That's
yeah,
before podcast kind of took off, really. So
yeah, one of my buddies was doing some stuff with podcasting, and he recommended there's an event called New Media Expo, and they
right,
had a wing where it was like focused on new media. So they had like a lot of bloggers, and then there was just like one room they had for these weirdos that were doing podcasting, internet radio. And anyways, he went to that event, and he came back. He was like, "Bro, we got to try this thing." And he
yeah,
started a show, and I started creating content. I thought YouTube, because I did video in college, I mean in high school, and I thought, maybe it makes sense to do video. I'm okay with that, but I was afraid of what I look like on video, so that shied away. But I launched 2 episodes. I have to go back and try to find them in the ether right now on YouTube, and then I put those on a blog that was absolutely horrid.
yeah,
And then later that year in 2013, when I actually officially launched a podcast, and yeah, it's been a whirlwind since.
yeah. I mean, because you met people like Mark Cuban and a few others like that, haven't
Yeah,
you? How's
yeah.
that been?
It was remarkable. He was down to earth, dude. But it was really, it just helped me to realize that the top people, you're not that far away from them.
Yeah,
And if you, and the thing that made me go to that dinner that night was somebody invited me because they saw the stuff that I was producing. So this hit me
right,
again this morning too. As getting ready, it's you want the key in life, I feel, when it comes towards like success, is giving, and I know this sounds cliche, but just hear me out on it, is giving something of value or of worth to people, And oftentimes it's not that difficult to give something of worth because most people don't do that. It's really
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
do it. We can put out mediocre garbage, but when you put something out of worth to individuals, then reputation increase. And everybody, even folks like Mark Cuban, they have a need. And at the time was Mark was investing in a company, and he's a co-founder of a company called Firefly. I think, no, excuse me, not Firefly, the wrong company there. It was Fireside,
Yeah.
I believe, and they were doing, and they still are doing, like almost like what like a audio medium. And
Right.
because I was producing good content, it
Yeah.
made sense to be invited. So the point is, like, when you put out good good stuff, when you're sharing, bringing value to the populace, to it, or any niche, you become known in that, and that brings opportunity.
Mm.
So to get a chance to rub elbow with him, it was really remarkable. Got a chance to chat with him just for a few, about a minute or so, but
Yeah.
it was pretty darn cool.
Yeah. I mean, the whole contact thing, it's especially when you're starting out, because no one really knows like what to do or where to go. I mean, the whole point with this podcast, there's so much that I could learn. So
Mhm.
if I need to learn it, there's so many other people out there that can make use of that. I mean, been putting content on social media for ages now. Obviously,
Yeah.
the podcast is a little bit different than that. So, how have you seen it progress from there? Because obviously, you started essentially when you started the podcast, for example. At the beginning, you're kind of scratching your head a little bit. So,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to anyone that's at that stage? I guess.
Yeah. You can't see the horizon. You can't see further down the horizon. You can just probably
Mm,
have a glimpse of what is out there. But let's back that up. You can't see over the horizon, but you may have a vision or idea of what's going to be like. And the only way you're going to get the chance to see what's on the other side of the horizon is by just keep going towards that.
mm,
At the beginning, it may seem like it's very far away, but in time, in a crucible of time, if you keep doing this naturally, as a byproduct of that, you find that you help impact so many people along the way. You learn so much, and you see so much along that journey towards that inevitable horizon. And what I've come to realize is that if you are only focusing on, like, the reward for you, then this becomes lame. But if you can focus on the reward for other people, then it becomes even um, more impactful, more
yeah.
beneficial. Let me give you an example what I mean by this. When I first started it, I remember the feeling that I had when I was starting off in sales, and I was like, man, I wish there was a resource that I could have used to get help with some of my basic pitch, my cold outreach messaging, some ideas, some tips, and I didn't have available. I had to rely on sales managers that were available, or try to find people. But the resource on demand at my fingertips was absolutely remarkable. It was a great idea. So I started to figure if I could help other people with that, it would be beneficial. I didn't make any money out the
Yeah.
gate, not at all. It was costing me money out the gate, and it still costs me money to this day. But obviously, we have a lot more money to make from it. But the thing, though, was, as I kept going down that path towards that horizon, like, maybe I can impact a large number of people,
Mm,
I got ones and twosies. And when I got Jose Diaz was the first one that reached out to me, still a client to this day. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, I need some help with sales and marketing. I saw your post," and it was literally my first post on Facebook. And that fueled me to say, if one person could be benefit from this is great. I
yeah.
impacted one individual, but I knew Jose. But the second person was Katie. I had no clue who Katie was. Katie found a podcast. She was flying from a company event, a sales kickoff, and she was on a plane and found my show and listened to it and reached out. And I was like, this is no way this stranger found it. Then Martin Clay was the next one. He was local to Delray. And then Destiny, she was down in Fort Lauderdale. So when these human beings that I didn't know, I started to pass them or interact
Mm,
with them on this walk to this horizon. Turns out they were trying to go there as well, to this inevitable success, or towards an outcome. And we had this journey together. And as I kept doing that, the tribe became bigger. The experiences became bigger. The stages became
yeah.
bigger. Opportunities became bigger. So if you're sitting there starting and you're like, man, I want to get to where Donald is, or get to where Mark Cuban is. Well, you can't compare their 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Mark Cuban's 50 years of doing it to your 50 seconds of idea, or 50 days of an idea.
Mm,
That's not fair at all. Not fair to you, not fair to him. Like, that's not how it works. But what you do need to do is figure out who can I impact today. And if you can look at that every single day, who can I impact? Then next thing you know, opportunities come and going towards this inevitable success on the horizon becomes so much more enjoyable when you're doing it with others and helping them as well.
Yeah, excellent. Is that where the books came from then?
The I'll sell it like a mango.
Yeah, well, you got two, haven't you?
Yes, well,
Yeah.
4 publications right now officially.
Oh, four.
Um, 4 publications.
Yeah,
The book Sell It Like a Mango is my main book, and that was
yeah.
through Sound Wisdom, our publishers. I started that book, believe it or not, 2016. The idea was around, let's write a book. The title of that book and the finished product came after I got a book coach, and it was like a 5-year process. But
Wow.
it came after I got a coach who helped me, and I finished a book in like really a full year is when that all was done. But the coach helped me to define the story, because for the whole time I was writing a sales book on how to become a better seller, and it was garbage.
Yeah.
But then he was like, listen, tell me about the first thing you ever sold. And I told him about me trying to sell mangoes. And then he was like, that's a story right there. Go deeper. And we did a mind map. So the challenge and the message behind that book, in Jamaica, I saw people downtown and, in Kingston and in Spanish Town selling fruits in the fruit market and so forth. So I figured I could sell this product too. I could sell a mango. We had mangoes in our front yard on a tree. My cousins want mango. There's a demand for it. People want it. The mango that they're selling downtown wasn't any different than the mango that I had. It was like mangoes from almost like the same tree, same breed of mango from the same country, the same region, right? What's the difference? But the thing was, I came to realize that I sucked at selling mango. I didn't know how to sell a mango. And then we made a correlation when it comes to B2B selling. Do people have the similar products? Do people have similar services? Absolutely they do.
Yeah.
But what makes one person who have the same similar product outsell the other? Oftentimes it's not the product. Oftentimes it's not necessarily the company. What it is the individual. So Sell It Like a Mango is the new seller's guide to closing more deals. And it's how no matter what product you're selling, it doesn't matter about the actual product itself. It's about the value that you're able to articulate as a seller. And over the years of doing a podcast, being able to interact with hundreds of guests and hear these principles, and also through my sales experience and coaching and consulting with other companies, it helped us to forge that book, Sell It Like a Mango, using this Jamaican experience as that vehicle for that. And then my other 2 publications I did with one of my best buddies. He is Dr. Allen at Brigham Young University. And he's over to works with their sales program. And I'm in the field and do this. And we co-authored Professional Selling, which is in about 90 universities right now across North America. And then Advanced Selling, which is used again in, I think we have about 45 universities using that one, somewhere around there. And then my planner, I hated the way I saw sales planners out there. And I've been planning ever since I was a teenager. So I was able to coordinate and craft up a planner that I felt would be effective for sellers. And that's the Sales Evangelist Sales Planner. So. So 4 publications, and all that happened within like the matter of that was like in a matter of a couple of years, believe it or not, those 4 publications, when in actuality, I always said I was a sucky writer. So go figure.
Yeah. So I mean, when you got that first draft down, then, and you say by your own accord, you're a sucky writer.
Yeah.
Was it? Did you have the idea of doing more books from then, or was you a bit like phased?
Yeah.
Brownbeaten by it initially, I guess.
The very, very first one before I redid it, I was like, this is deflating. Then I redid. It was inspiring in some degree to say I wrote this many pieces of pages, but then when you read them, it was like, this is garbage. And then as I got the coach and redid it, it was better. And then after that, I got the confidence to write. When I got approached by Stukent to write a textbook, and I got my buddy to help me out as a co-author, it was great in that process. Then they wanted to do a second book, and then my planner. Well, after all of that, it became that it was after the second draft of Sell It Like a Mango, my confidence was out the roof at that point, that I felt that I could do a lot. It was taxing mentally and emotionally, but it felt possible to write a second one. And there's one that I'm brewing and contemplating for the next one. So that's in the works, but we got a little bit of time for that though.
Yeah, I was about to ask if there's any more in the pipeline.
Yeah, we one specifically we're trying to work on around pipeline. We believe we're big fans of pipeline, and we have different philosophies that are out there. But I think it's critical. That's the hardest part for salespeople is building pipe. Like, how do you do that consistently and effectively?
Yeah.
And we want to be able to do some good. We don't want to put any just again garbage out there. We want to make sure we have really good stuff. So we're taking our time and and testing stuff, and then we'll
Yeah.
document it. So
Well, what advice would you give to people for filling the pipeline? From various different angles. You could look at a business that's kind of
mm,
been doing well for many years, but is
yeah,
like going downhill. Or you could look at it from the perspective of a founder just starting out, has got a good idea. How do we generate leads and bring in leads from there? What would your advice be?
I think the idea of bringing in leads is way easier than we make it seem these days. So, like, I am a big proponent of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and full disclosure, they do sponsor me. But I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, independent of that, and also I'm a fan of Apollo.io.
Yeah,
Both of these different tools are just remarkable for getting leads. And if you go back and look at something like uh, you look at the Sales Navigator, for instance, you can find quote unquote leads
mm,
or good prospects. The challenge is not, again, finding the leads. The challenge that I find right now is being able to articulate a message that capture those
yeah,
leads' attention. And I feel that the best way to do that is practice. The issue, though, that many sellers come across is that they'll do it once, they test it, they try something, and it doesn't work, and then they automatically feel that they need to stop, or they can't continue, or it's not going to work. And we tell ourselves all these rejecting messages, such as "I'm not good enough" or "I can't do this." But all of us, no matter how good you are, you still get those rejections, and it's
yeah,
important that you just consistently do it. So the biggest tip that I would give someone is to consistently test it out. I don't have the golden message for you. Nobody has the golden
mm,
message when it comes towards an outreach message. But the formula that I've seen to work the most is not necessarily exact wording, but it's the idea of understanding, finding somebody that has a problem and being able to offer a relevant solution to that
yeah,
problem. So relevant, everybody has problems. Is a matter of how much do I depict that to be a real problem. You might say, well, Donald, you might sell cars and say, Donald, well, you need a new car. And I might say, no, my car get me from point A to point B. It's not a problem to me. It may be a nicer car that you have,
mm,
and yeah, maybe an EV would be great, but I'm not a big, I don't know, it's not a big issue for me right now, quote unquote. I like EVs, so I'm just using an example. But the point is, but let's say, for instance, that I'm in a situation where the gas prices are astronomical, and perhaps that you saw me complain about, the fact that, rising prices. Maybe at that point, it's relevant to say,
mm,
Donald, I know you have looked at this in the past. We talked about this in the past. Here's something, or whatnot. Perhaps somebody new in their role. What are some of the challenges that she might face if she's new in a role as an HR director? Do you have a solution that can help her
mm,
become more effective? So relevancy is the critical component, and that's harder to find. But if you can identify a relevant message and creatively grab somebody's attention, I think that's a combination there that's going to help you. And the best way to do that is to test and to try and to
yeah,
be consistent. Every day you should be prospecting. I admonish people to do prospecting at least, if you can't do anything, at least 30 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, do something. But I think it's the habit of doing it makes you better at it in the long run.
yeah. That consistency definitely,
Yeah.
it builds up that skill. Would you say that's people don't have that consistency through to, is it laziness or is it a confidence thing? What have you found?
I think there's a high, it's probably a high medium in between. If you
Yeah,
look like a pendulum, some days you're probably just lazy straight up, and then some days it's just the fear of that rejection, right? Like, I don't want to get a no. I don't want to put
mm,
myself in an uncomfortable situation, and it just makes you fall right in that medium. I think oftentimes some people just really just don't want to do it, but the
yeah,
critical component is having a reason to do it, not because you have to, doing it because you feel that you want to, like doing it because there's an outcome that you want. Again, maybe in your particular horizon that you and your family have is to have a multiple stream of income and have investment properties. Then of course that's your horizon that you're working towards. Then start right now. Start that step little by little. But the biggest component is that having a purpose, something that drives you, that makes you go and do it. I mean, nobody wants to, I don't find people that want to put themselves through pain just because they want to have pain. Well, there's probably some psychos out there, but the person who does this on a day-to-day basis, maybe she wants to run a marathon, or perhaps he wants to be a bodybuilder. So you do put yourself through those challenging situations, and by doing that consistently, it just helps you. Kobe Bryant was a great example of that. That person that just was, he put the work in as a
Yeah.
average basketball talent, so to speak, but then he became an extraordinary basketball talent. But he just put the work in, and the outcome makes it so much more rewarding in the end.
Yeah, he was definitely first in, last out.
Yeah, right.
Would you? I mean, so let's look at sales in the last 10 years. Then, how have you
Sure.
seen it shifting? The way people buy, or the buying psychology behind it, and from a salesperson's perspective as a whole. Have you seen that shift over the last 10 years? Has it?
Yeah, so 10 years, I'll go back to 2004, 2014, right?
Yeah,
And I would say the biggest shift that I've seen then is the embrace of information
right.
from online. And we've been hearing this for a long time. The buyers come more prepared, and probably since back then we've heard this. But as a buyer, I was more apt to taking information from a seller as face value,
Yeah,
to be legit. But then I realized that I can find that same information online. And the other thing, though, the other behavior that buyers have is that I've seen that's made the game a change, is we can call, because of that habit of finding information, we can call BS when we see it.
yeah,
So when we see a BS or a crappy sales pitch trying to just like hoodwink us, or trying to just sell us garbage, or not somebody not putting the effort in, we don't give that any time of day. We feel like they don't know us, and we feel like they're just spraying and pushing a whole bunch of information out there, or just a blanket outreach message. But when we see that somebody tried, when we see that somebody has done their work, and when we see that they have put some effort into it, it makes it so much more willing for us to listen. We find it more relevant towards us because of that personal tie. And I feel that's what has changed, because most of the people that are in decision making roles right now, again, they've probably answered 20,000 emails over the past 10 years, if they've been around for that, during that time period. And they are really just prone to this idea that I don't want, that most emails are spam. Most emails are
yeah,
just trying to sell me something. So the shift that I find, again, one, buyers have access to more information, don't necessarily need the sellers often enough if they're just order taking sellers. Two is the fact that buyers understand those emails are not necessarily tailored to them, and it's garbage, so it lack the relevancy. And then the third component that I find with this is that the buyers want to make sure that they have some kind of connection to you prior to them being able to respond to you, because in the easiest platform like a LinkedIn, or if you do have some kind of introduction that you can get from a person, those are the easiest way to let that guard down. Now, I don't want to get the misconception that buyers won't answer the phone if you call them, or if they won't reply to your email, but it's way harder, I've seen, and that's a big shift. But when you do have that POR, we call it POR, point of reference, prior to that email going out, it increases the odds of that email going into good pile, and getting a response. So I think that's the biggest shift. And then the final piece is, like, we've changed the vision of our company. Like the vision that we have, this mission, this mantra, so to speak, this view that we see I don't know how long this is going to take, Leroy, but we probably say, like, in the next, let's say 30 years from now, we're looking to the horizon, right? We envision a day where sales reps' phone calls and emails aren't ignored, or that they're not rejected. We envision a day when salespeople are actually viewed as those, I don't want to say the word consultant, but I want to see them as that McKinsey rep, that McKinsey
yeah,
or KPMG consultant. Though when people see those individuals, the companies are investing like 50,000, 100,000 for these people to come and share insights. Oftentimes salespeople have those relevant information because they're interacting with multiple different corporations and enterprises that have those challenges, and they're able to identify that. But when sellers are able to come with that type of industry authority figure or industry authority viewpoint, rather than a transactional, just trying to get something, just trying to get money, that makes a whole different perspective and how they're valued. So I envision that day, and we want to work towards that day. And the content we create is towards that vision of
Mm.
envision in a world where sellers are their calls are actually looked forward to, their
Yeah.
emails are actually sought after, and conversation with them are actually valuable rather than just like a
Yeah.
little order taker trying to take money from
Yeah.
them.
How would you make that shift then? Because obviously,
Yeah,
it's a huge industry,
yeah.
and
So
you definitely need more authenticity in there. But how do you change the industry as a whole to make it that way? Because it's a
yeah.
great idea.
Mhm. It's who, not how, right?
Yeah.
So here's I'm not a big big wig, but I do have a platform, so I can utilize
Mm.
that too. It's being able to get, I feel, a generational change. If you look at the cigarette
Yeah.
companies, they did a fantastic job over the years to be able to market themselves with a Joe Camel concept, and going way back.
Yeah.
And the idea that they did was cradle to grave, right? They started really, really young with individuals to help shape them towards that. I'm looking 30 years out, right? If I can help people adjust their beliefs when they come out into the sales world, that's going to be important. Now, if you look at my LinkedIn, you notice something towards that belief is I'm an adjunct professor. Now, I'm not a full-time professor. I got to run a business, but I do believe in giving back. And I'm also towards our vision. I've been teaching at my alma mater. And go back to what I mentioned, we have 2 textbooks that are used in universities. If we can help impact salespeople from early stage, when they're freshmen, when they're early in college, developing their business acumen towards this consulting, towards this industry authority belief idea, it starts making this adjustment early on. And that's
Mm.
one way. Who, not how, also impacting who are some other people in the space that we can get to come along on this vision. And we've been saying it the past several months now, and we see other people are believing that as well. And I think that's going to be helpful once we can get into the zeitgeist of sales and help other sales influential persons come across this. And then also, I think there's going to need to be a standardization eventually. And what I mean by that is not that there's only one way of doing things, but I do believe that sales professionals, when they get to the point where they're seen as like, when there's an industry authority that can help with a certification or with
Mm.
a process, then that gives more weight to it. And we've always seen when companies or markets get standardized or have some kind of standardized certification, we see that they increase in their legitimacy. There's so many of us out there that have our own viewpoints of sales and what we feel that may work. But is there a set standard that can be adopted? And you see companies like Salesforce with their certification program. I feel that we're well on the way towards that day where sellers can get to that elevated point in their where the sales role is an elevated viewpoint. And I also feel once the caliber of individuals bringing value is seen even more so, it makes it that much more beneficial for us to as buyers to interact with sellers like that. And the ones who are going to be the sleazy order takers or the scammers, they're just going to get thrown by the wayside because they won't be able to hang.
Yeah, I suppose they'll get shifted out more and more.
Mm.
Like you said, it's more authentic now, definitely, than it was
Yeah,
10, even 20 years ago.
yeah.
And those are the ones that you are seeing that are successful. So would you say because of that, then is it easier to get into sales now than it was 20 years ago,
I believe it's easier to get into sales because there's a
or
more,
succeed with it? Yeah.
yeah, the idea of the succeeding. Let's go back to that. Yes, I do believe that it has been, and it is easier to be in sales because there's so many different
Mm.
tools to help you in that process now. And there's the advent or the creation of those roles such as SDRs and BDRs. There's also the creation of roles such as client success or customer success, excuse me. And you have like sales engineer. So I feel that there's more avenues rather than one person being a
Mm.
glorified chef doing all of that process. But because of these different roles, it makes it easier for people to be able to adopt a part of that process that probably wouldn't be able to be a full cycle seller. I mean, when I was going into it 10 years ago, so to speak, I was doing the sourcing some of my own leads. I was doing my own prospecting. I was, closing the deal. I was doing the demo for them, part of the process. and then also being customer success. But now again, it makes it easier for you to be able to find your sweet spot as a seller, and to be able to just get into one of those mediums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, I just want to pick up on something that you mentioned previously. You mentioned that tech sales is one of the most daunting. Why is that, in your opinion? Because I come from an IT sales background, so I know exactly what you're on about there.
Yeah.
But for obviously anyone listening, why is that from your experience, and what industries are the most difficult to make progress in? Would you say?
So one more time, why is it tech sales more so daunting?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think right now in, if we're talking January, February, what month are we in? February
agree.
2024. It's harder because we lived in this era where there was a lot of money in tech sales. Tech
Mhm.
sales is a darling of the business world. You look at those companies, and they help lead the pack, right? LinkedIn and some of these other platforms, these tools are made for that industry, and then a lot of other industries come back off of that. So, but the thing is, though, when that money is not there, it becomes more challenging. And I think right now we're seeing the shift in the tech sales world where individuals who are order takers can't stay in it. They can't thrive.
Mm.
They have to be able to be playmakers, so to speak, be those individuals that can bring value an industry authority, so to speak. And I think that's what makes it the most challenging, or the most challenging right now. The other side to this too, why I think it is that it's super competitive as well, because not just anyone can just come off the street and say, I'm going to make it in tech sales. These days, you got to have some kind of skill set. And the quotas are getting bigger, and it's harder to get a hold of these prospects that are way more. Their tech sales prospects are more conditioned again to this buying process because they're running the same exact motion. So it's even harder it's like two kung fu masters fighting each other. It's
Yeah.
going to be more challenging. So I think for those reasons, it's a little bit more tougher in tech sales, but it's possible. It's very possible because people are still thriving and succeeding in it. And that's why you need to get the proper education or just better your skills, rather than where an industry where you may come into a company, you have certain accounts. Like I have a friend who's in this market space where he inherited a bunch of accounts, and he goes around and build relationships with them, kind of like Tommy Boy, to help them place order. I'm like, yeah, that's challenging, but again, the business is you're not as difficult as another place where you have to go and literally develop new business on a daily. So, anyways, for
Yeah.
those reasons, I think it's challenging today.
You were saying there that obviously when the money comes out, it makes it a little bit more difficult with the markets now. There are some talks and concerns around that,
Yeah,
and usually when the markets go like that, it's your marketing that goes down, and then sales that go down in terms
yeah.
of budget allocation. What would you say to business owners that are thinking about reducing those spend on sales and marketing specifically? Because obviously those are the avenues that generate sales.
Yeah.
So to cut that back is sometimes crazy, but I understand. What would your advice to be to them?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has to do it intelligently, right,
Yeah,
according to their areas. But I would say, for instance, like the philosophy that I would give is that you can make sacrifices elsewhere. Um, and my one thing I've seen is you got to learn to zig when everyone else is zagging. Again, zig when everyone else is zagging. What happens? Let's say the market. Let's just give an idea here, just for kicks and giggles. 10 companies in a marketplace.
mm,
The industry is getting tougher, economy is getting harder, and people start cutting the place that they feel they don't need the money the most. They don't need to spend on, let's say, it's marketing.
yeah, yeah,
So there are 100 people in this marketplace, and there are 10 companies. So each company rightfully could get 10 customers. But let's say that five out of those 10 companies now cut back their marketing.
mm,
So now five organization have access to that 100 group of people. So their number now increased to 20 that they could potentially have. And what I'm trying to get at is just to share a simple concept. If your competitors are decreasing, that's when you need to go in all on it. You need to go in on gas at that point. You need to get some money, borrow some money from somebody. You need to go, sell one of your cars, but put some more money on capturing that market share and having more presence or creating more content or being more relevant. Because what's going to happen when people see that you are around and others are not, they're branded to feel that you're the best. And the other component to that, if they do get money, they're going to go to the one that they see the most, and that's going to be you. And then the other side to that too is that when your competitors come back in and try to get more of that market share, it's going to be harder for them because now you've captured the attention of their prospects as well. And now you just increase. So in tough times, I've heard this statement. It was by I forgot the name of the family that were in Mexico during the revolution that became a huge telecom company, but they literally bought when it was bloody in the street. When the Mexican Revolution was going on, they were buying up businesses and companies and whatnot, and they had the change to be able to do that. And now they're one of the biggest organizations in the world in Mexico. And the point is, you buy when it's bloody in the street.
Yeah.
And same idea, when the market is tough, when everybody is running, when they're zigging, figure out a way to zag, go to the opposite direction, take advantage of the market share, go deeper in marketing at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny as well because when everyone's reducing their market spend, they're going to be seen a lot less. So
Yeah.
your efforts are 10 times more visible, I'd say.
Exactly. So even like right now, if just be frank, we are putting out way more pieces of content than we've ever done before. So go figure.
Yeah, no, it works.
Yeah.
Right, Donald, I'm appreciating of your time. So just one more question.
Sure.
How do you start meaningful conversations that lead to appointments? That's one of the things that you mentioned in your podcast before. So, some people that might not have heard that, how do you start those meaningful conversations with people?
The easiest way I do it is to find a way to talk about people, talk about them through LinkedIn. LinkedIn, it allows us to be able to have our guards down if you're not sending a spam message right out the gate.
Yeah.
So let's say, for instance, I see that you're doing a post about a podcast you're getting ready to launch. Easy peasy. It's like me saying something about your kid, nice, about your kid. Like, oh man, your kid literally did a good hit there or whatever on a baseball game. Like, oh man, thanks, man. Or man, heard what you and your kid were just talking about. Smart kid. Like, oh man, sounds great. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. So the concept though is if you're starting your podcast, what I would say is something to the nature of, Leeroy, saw you're launching a podcast. Can't wait to listen to it. As another podcaster, I know how tough it is. Out of curiosity, what prompted you to launch one right now? P.S. Permission to connect here on LinkedIn. You are going to reply to that message. I absolutely guarantee you're going to reply to that message. It's something that matters to you, something that's relevant, something that's important. Now, once you start that message, we start a conversation going back and forth. And we do have a podcast production company. So this would be my pitch for you. Then you would start sharing this. And I would say, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing when you're launching it? And you say, well, this is the hardest part. And then I would freely give you tips. I would say, well, Leeroy, here's what I did when I first started. I did this to create a content schedule. If you want to take a peek at mine, I can give you a tip so you can, use that to help you when it comes with content. Better yet, if you're open to it, we can jump on a 5 to 7 minute call and I can share some ideas that work for me. Again, it's a problem that you're having with something that's really important to you right now. And I'm a resource. Of course, I'm going to take that 5 to 7 minute call and it works. Or I might bridge the gap. Let's say we don't get to that point on LinkedIn, but you do accept my connection request and you do share, this is what I'm starting and I'm loving it. And I'll say, hey man, I can't wait. Drop a link so I can share that when it goes live so I can listen to your first episode. Yeah. Then I would probably send an email a few days later. I would say, I can't wait for that link as my subject line, ... Then Leeroy, can't wait to get that link to the episode. Over the weekend, I had an idea, a thought that came to mind. Out of curiosity, when it comes to producing your podcast, are you doing all that by yourself right now? Now, there's a higher chance you're going to reply to that email again because we made a connection on LinkedIn and the email is so hyper-personalized that it's going to be a no-brainer. You might say no, like, yeah, I'm good to go, but at least I'm going to get a response. And that's the critical component. Most people don't get engagement. And that's how I find to make it engagement. Make it relevant, make it personal, the very first one on the outreach to that person. My emails to you after that doesn't necessarily have to be super personalized. It could just be focused on podcasting and about the role of a podcast host, because those challenges are universal. So
yeah, it's just taking the time to make a proper connection rather than just hi, this is what we do, isn't it? Really?
It's hard. I know it is. I've done it. It's hard, but hey, nobody ever said that, success comes easily. You want to get to the horizon, you're going to need to walk. So
Yeah, no, excellent. Donald, thank you so much. If anyone's watching this that's not on LinkedIn, how do they get in touch with you?
yeah, if you're not on LinkedIn, you could go to the salesevangelist.com, thesalesevangelist.com. And we have content. If we give out a weekly sales tip, you can find that on our resource page. Or if you go down to the bottom of the pages, if you do want to take advantage of LinkedIn, we teach folks how they can maximize the things that I shared today on LinkedIn, and how you can get it from our free sales guide or LinkedIn guide. So LinkedIn made easy.
Perfect. Thank you, Donald. I really appreciate that.
Hey, thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.